Good morning, everyone. So I'm Suzanne. Pleasure to introduce here today for this special seminar about circular economy approaches and human capital development. And as we uh, welcomed Arnold here, we had a quick discussion about how he should be introduced and what really the size of the challenges that we are facing currently with sustainability and, of course, circularity as a solution. So Arnold Tukker is a distinguished professor, and he's the director of the Leiden Delft Erasmus Center for Sustainability, and he has worked on sustainability for over 30 years. When I asked him if sustainability is improving, he said yes and no. Yes, it is, but the size of the problems we need to address are also really increasing. So it's very, very complicated and complex. When I looked at your CV, Arnold, you really impressed me, the work you're doing on the world most ambitious and detailed global energy resource economic input-output database and models. And we were wondering, Shanti and I, why wouldn't we as ADB do this actually with our member countries and generate this kind of data we do. Okay, that's good to hear, for developing countries. The other interesting thing is, I think, is the very prominent EU project that you're working on in the field of sustainable product design. Right? And we had this discussion about, yes, products and materials have to become more sustainable and circular. But if we think about the amount and the sheer amount of things we need to build to ensure people have equal opportunities, this also becomes very, very difficult. So without further ado, I'll give you the floor to share your research with us and stimulate our thinking about how we can support and accelerate sustainability through circular economy at the Asian Development Bank.
Thanks for this nice introduction, Suzanne. So I'm going to talk about circular economy today. And of course, since I'm from a university, I will actually focus also on human capital development and knowledge development. But let me first explain where Leiden Delft Erasmus stands for. We basically are very lucky in the province of South Holland. That is totally at the west of our small country. And you see there 3 dots that represent basically 3 cities. I should have made 4 dots, but for ease. We have Leiden University, that is my university. Like the Filipinos, we had a problem with the Spanish 400 years ago. We fought them out of our country. Leiden was instrumental in doing so. I mean, we almost lost Leiden. If we would have lost Leiden, the country would have been cut in half. Alva would have conquered the country, but no, we stood up. And then the Prince of Orange, the great-great-great-great-great-grandfather of the current king, said, I think it is now good that we have a university in the lowlands, because all the universities, of course, were in the Spanish part of the Netherlands. And so Leiden University was born almost 450 years ago. We are the oldest. We are a generic university, a general university. We're very good in system analysis and doing physical material flow analysis. Okay, if you want to become an engineer 250 years ago, where did you have to go? You had to go to the army. And the army was needing engineers to understand how you could destroy things as good as possible with your cannonballs. And then 200 years ago, some smart people said that is not actually a smart way of using our brains. We need schools for civil engineering, for building up things. That was the cradle of Delft University of Technology, the first technical university in the Netherlands. And also very famous, world famous, I could say. Well, then we became, or have always been, I would say, a country of traders and business and whatever. And particularly a century ago, we made sure that the Rhine River really had an outlet near Rotterdam to the sea. And that became the biggest port in the world. And then we had some smart entrepreneurs that we need a business school, because that really learns us how to make money with our trade. So all of a sudden, you had a great university that is now called Erasmus University Rotterdam. And that is the best economic school we have, the best business school we have. If you then look at the knowledge that we need to tackle all these incredible sustainability problems, what do you need? You need to actually the institute, the knowledge of the institute that I led for 9 years, the Institute of Environmental Sciences. Where do the materials go? Where do they come from? Can we get them? How do we make them circular? Physical analysis of the economy. That is what we can do extremely good. in Leiden, next to biodiversity assessments. Then, of course, if you want to improve things, you need engineers, you need designers. Well, go to Delft. They have the best engineers and designers almost in any field that you can dream of. If you want to make things work in a capitalist economy, you need to make business out of it. Well, then go to Rotterdam because they know how to do that. And of course, we all know that in a very capitalist system, business may not always solve all the problems. So you need something like regulation, governance, even transition management. And all the universities have quite good groups dealing with that. Leiden is very well known for its law school. Rotterdam has an institute specialized in transitions, and so on. So that is why together we really can tackle these big problems. In the Center for Sustainability, we said, let's start with the problems that we have in the Netherlands and build it out from there. Well, we have a big industrial complex in Rotterdam. We have urban systems that need to become carbon neutral. We have very intensive horticulture in the west of the Netherlands, where TU Delft knows how to do that with drones and artificial intelligence. So we said, okay, all these areas have big problems. The horticulture sector, for instance, we heat in the winter the greenhouses with gas. Well, that is not tenable on the long term. So we thought we start there. But we export the knowledge, of course, as well abroad. Then, what is the kind of work that we do on the circular economy? There is a big program on circular economy with the Netherlands Environmental Assessment Agency. And yeah, they were smart enough to engage not only the official organizations like the Central Planning Bureau, the Central Bureau of Statistics, but also a few universities, including us. I'm basically in the director's board of that program. We are a member of what is called the European Institute of Technology. That is a big virtual institute that actually spends 60 million euros per year on all kinds of resource efficiency projects. And yeah, okay, that is a good place to be as a university. We are a partner with the Ellen MacArthur Circular Economy Network. Ellen MacArthur, you probably know her. She used to be a very famous solo sailor. And then after she really circumvented the world in the fastest time ever, she became a hero everywhere in the world. And she thought, okay, I'm going to use my brand to really push the issue of the circular economy. So she set up a foundation, laid connections with all kind of Fortune 500 firms that fund the foundation. And that is a very strong advocacy organization in the circular economy. And again, they teamed up with something like 20 universities. And again, we are one of them, TU Delft as well. And we led a lot of projects on circular economy. Good. First, I want to say you a little bit, and Suzanne, we already talked a little bit about that in the beginning. Circular economy is not easy. It's very easy to say circular economy and recycle and I don't need new materials and all the emissions are gone and whatever. No, sorry, it's not like that. This picture is a picture of one of my PhDs and actually similar to work of this International Resource Panel. It gives a very simple insight in how much resources we extracted. I think this was in 2011, something like 74 billion tons we put out of the earth. But what is that? The yellow part is fossil fuels, that is oil, coal, gas. We burn it. No way to make it circular. It's just going up in the air. So these materials we have to get rid of by an energy transition to wind and so on. Then the green one, that is the biomass. That is actually the food that we eat for 90%. Of course, a little bit goes into, let's say, wood for furniture and whatever, but 90% of the biomass is basically eaten. Well, I don't know how it goes with you, but the product of my eating, I don't want to eat that again. That is not what you do. So half of the amount of materials that we use in the world actually cannot be recycled. They are inherently dissipative. And then we come to another thing that a lot of people tend to forget. And we had a little exchange on this with Shanti and Suzanne. And it was like, okay, what do you do in the global south if you build new infrastructure? If, for instance, China now really has the railways, they have the big houses and whatever. But in many places in the world, you have per person a few square meters. You need more housing, basically. Yeah, you need more railways. You need more roads. Well, you cannot do that with the materials that are already in the economy. You need new materials for the extra. I was joking that I would give Susanne a Lego box. That is, and that is the perfect circular material. But if you have one Lego box and you can build one house, I cannot recycle it magically into 10 houses. Impossible. Yeah. So we need new materials. And at this moment, how the economy is functioning worldwide, it is actually that of the 50% of the solid materials that we keep in the economy, 40% is used for the first time. So that is just new materials. And then you only have 10% left that you really now already can make circular. So the first big lesson is we will have to mine materials for the foreseeable future. What we should do, however, make sure that everything that we put on the market today, our electric vehicles, our buildings, our infrastructure, are made in such a way that you can easily reuse them, that you can easily reuse the components. If we don't do that, I will give some examples later, you end up with houses that at the end of the life, you only can destroy them and make rubble out of it and never can use that as building materials. Yeah, think about houses that can be, let's say, a very nice example is an old laboratory that we had in Leiden. That was all steel bars and glass. Well, they could get the steel bars out and reuse the steel bars. That was quite interesting. They had a problem because they didn't know exactly the quality of what they put in 60 years ago. But if you think about that beforehand, and you know the specs, and you keep that in a database, then maybe in 60 years, if for some reason the building has to be destroyed, you can actually decompose it like Lego and then reuse all the components like Lego blocks again. The other big thing is like, oh yeah, the circular economy is so good. It gives us more jobs because recycling is and reuse and repair, that is more job intensive as making the primary stuff. And it gives us more income. Because we live in an economy or in an, I would say almost like in a society that is driven by the capitalist narratives of having more jobs, more GDP and more wealth, that kind of things. I'm not going to say that is a bad storyline. Of course, in the Global South, we need more wealth, more jobs, more income. That is obvious, yeah? But do we need it in my country? I'm not so sure. The problem with the circular economy is if you do, and I have PhDs working on that as well. Where is my mobile phone? I think, no, it's somewhere there, but never mind. The mobile phone, okay. That I don't have in my hands now, but imagine I have it in my hands. That's a mobile phone of now 4 years old, but they had an older one that was 8 years old. Do you know why I had to get rid of it? The problem was that my bank all of a sudden asked me to do a third-party verification via my app. Otherwise, I couldn't do banking anymore on the internet. And of course, my old mobile phone had an Android system that was not compatible anymore with the app. So I needed to have a new phone. Otherwise, I was lost. I could not, and so on. What happens with this mobile phone at the moment? Yeah, of course, it goes into a bin or something, shredded, blah, blah. Okay, let's now assume that for some reason we can use this mobile phone 2 times as long as usual. Who is going to suffer? Well, there may be a little bit of repair and whatever. The mobile phone will not become very more expensive or more difficult to make. Of course, the production plants in Korea, in Japan, in China. If the world uses its mobile phones twice as long, we need half the production. We need half the workers. You only have half the value added. Yeah, and a lot of people in the circular economy business don't want to hear this, but it's the reality. Is that bad? No, not at all. Because I still have my mobile phone and you have your mobile phone. It just lasts 2 times as long. You still can make the same phone calls. You have the same, I would say, societal services. So if we would pay almost double for the mobile phones and the money would go to the workers, everybody would be happy. Yeah, I actually still have the same service for the same amount of money. And actually at societal level, it's better because we get more output with less work. Well, that is good. We have more holidays and that kind of things. Okay, unfortunately, our economy doesn't work like that. Yeah. One way, I have a Samsung phone. For Samsung to make money is to make sure that the phone is as quickly as obsolete as possible because then can they sell me a new one. Yeah. So our economy, the system is kind of like broken. Yeah. And despite all this, I say we need to start with the circular economy now. Of course, we have these very high level questions. Is our system good enough? Should we change to another system as a capitalist system or whatever? But it is also clear that if we don't start with the circular economy now, we will have huge problems in, let's say, 20, 30 years from now. At this moment in Europe, we have the wind turbines that we installed 30 years ago. They come to their end of life, and we have these wind blades. My goodness, huge blades. We don't know what to do with them. We have no clue. So they go to a landfill. A few of them are repurposed as a bike shed. Well, sorry, I mean, if I tear down 100 wind turbines in the Netherlands, I probably can create more than enough bike sheds. And what I have to do with wind turbine number 101, I have no clue. Yeah. So this is not a solution. We have to think about a different way of building these wind turbines in a way that the blades are really reusable and recyclable. That is what the thing is. So what can we realize? Well, the idea is, this is difficult to read for you, but what you try to do is with less material, we have the same amount, what we call in technical jargon, in-use stocks. So the amount of phones, the amount of cars, the amount of houses, square meters of houses that we all can use, that stays the same, but we are capable of creating them with less materials. Then automatically you have less losses. And automatically you have less environmental impacts. That is the idea that it is. And the strategies that you use are the so-called R strategies. That stands for recycling, reuse, and so on. I'll give you a few examples. What I see is what a lot of people forget, and I heard the day before yesterday a brilliant story about how perverse incentives can work against the circular economy. The circular economy, first and foremost, is trying to avoid the use of products and materials and so on. I had the luck to be in Paris for a year. I won a grant there with the Institute of Advanced Study. And the gray part of Paris, the Paris picture there, was how Paris was 40 years ago. The Champs-Élysées, the big boulevard with the Arc de Triomphe, full of cars. They had a new mayor 10 years ago. She started to change the city. She made bike lanes. She made sure that a highway on the border of the Seine River was closed. All of a sudden you could sit there and sip a coffee or have a red wine and that kind of things. I mean, imagine that if you could do that with the Passig River or something like that. All of a sudden, you cannot imagine, but Paris was like that 40 years ago. The implication is that car traffic went hugely down, I think 40%, and that now 40% of the Parisians either take public transport or they bike to work. That is brilliant. You use actually less material in your transport system. Yeah. The other ways of doing things are, of course, and there are more technological solutions. I will skip them in the end in the interest of time. The other thing is, of course, repair. Yeah. At this moment, like I said, if my mobile phone is broken, I don't know. I have to go to a repair shop, and I'm lucky if the battery can be replaced. My old mobile phone, still, I could replace the battery. Now I have to go to a repair shop. So that is why the EU said we need to have a law on the right of repair, that the stuff that you buy can be repaired. That has huge implications. If I own a factory in China and I export to Europe and export to the US and whatever, if Europe has this law, I'm not going to make a special product for Europe and a special product for the US and a special product for China. You basically make sure that your whole production line is actually complying with that. So, of course, Europe is a big economic entity and we have influence, but by this you really see things are changing. And then we go to things like repurposing, manufacturing, and at the bottom line, you have recycling and recovery. And that is actually where we have become very good at in the Netherlands. We are proudly saying that we have something like 89% recovery of our waste. But if you look a little bit under the hood, what is it? Well, this is a road, I think actually in the Netherlands, a new built road. What do we do with that? This is old rubble from demolished houses. So what we basically do is we demolish our houses, we crush them, we have crushed stone, and we use it as road foundation. If we don't happen to have a road to build, We even use it as filling material for a new built area or something like that. That is plain downcycling. Yeah, it is not reusing the material as a material. I have an example there of Berlin after the Second World War. As you probably know, it was totally bombed. I think Manila, unfortunately, as well. So what these women are doing, they took the stones, they took the cement out of it, and you could reuse the stones. Well, that is real reuse. I'm not going to say that this is the system that we have to use, but there is a clear difference between reusing the stones and using it like that. This is downcycling, this is upcycling. Yeah, and that is what you want. And then you have waste to energy. I heard from, I mean, you really want to have that as last resort with waste that is so dirty that, you know, getting energy out of it is better. I heard a fantastic story 2 days ago about China. Apparently in China, they count electricity from waste to energy as being carbon neutral. So we have the global agreements on carbon reduction, and the Chinese translated that is good for us. They even give a premium to villages and cities that get that kind of electricity. Apparently, all of a sudden, by that kind of mechanism, they don't, you know, use waste to energy just for waste to which you cannot do anything else. But they build incinerators like hell, waste incinerators. These cities actually become rich out of it. And all the waste, also the waste that you can recycle, go into the incinerator. Well, that is something that you don't want. I mean, you want to reuse your paper as paper. You want to reuse your plastic as plastic. You don't want to have it in an incinerator. So these are the kind of things that you really have to think about if you set up a waste management system. And I know I talk for an audience that is very familiar with the Philippines. I mean, if you then see where you stand now in this country and where you have to go, this sounds like abacadabra or magic and whatever, but believe me, in the Netherlands 60 years ago, we were like the Philippines almost. So it can be done. It takes time, and you have to avoid a number of the mistakes that I just indicated. What do we do with Leiden Delft Erasmus? Maybe I should skip that because I already indicated that a little bit. Basically, if you want to do circular economy, you have to do things like look at how the system works, where the materials go in, where the materials go out, where the stocks are, and so on. Well, again, that is my institute, the Institute of Environmental Sciences in Leiden. I have still the colleagues in the institute that developed in the 1990s the life cycle assessment methods, Jeroen Guiné, the material flow analysis methods, Esther van der Voet. I mean, these really great people that were the pioneers in the methodologies to do this, we still have them, and we are really strong in that. Like I said, circular technology and design, Delft, many faculties can help you with that. Circular business models. Rotterdam School of Management is really very good at it. And maybe to peek a little bit into this thing of the mobile phones and washing machines and lights and whatever, that are all industries that plan obsolescence. Yeah. The mobile phones, I just gave the example. I had a washing machine. All of a sudden, after 5 years, the ball bearing was done. I call a repair guy and he said, Arnold Tukker, this is, yeah, I mean, I can come. You pay already 50 euros just for me to come, and then I have to do an investigation. That's another 25 euros. Then I can start to repair. That's probably another 100 euros. I cannot give you a guarantee that it's not leaking because it's a very complex thing. I recommend you buy a new washing machine. And I was like, my goodness, for a ball bearing. If the ball bearing could have been a little bit sturdier, that cost you 2 euros extra for the washing machine. I would, why? But I cannot see that in the shop if there's a good or a bad ball bearing. But okay, that's. And then of course this company, Bauknecht, even a German company, was very happy because you had to buy a new one. Lamps. They could already make lamps in the 1930s that would last for thousands and thousands of hours. At some point in Geneva, the people from Philips, Osram and whatever came together. Oh, that is very bad. If you build the lamps that they last a lifetime, we don't sell anything anymore. They made an agreement that the average lamp could last 1,000 to 1,500 hours. So let's say a year. And they devised a marketing trick or something like that, that it would give better light or something like that. So for tens of years, we basically had lamps that lasted shorter as you wanted to do. And that is all because more turnover, more throughput gives you more money. Okay, you can think about different business models. I did research into that, they're all complex, but okay, let's have a look at it. Copiers, that is a very nice example. There used to be a time that I, as a director, had to buy a copier for my office. Now you actually sign a contract. We give you a copier more or less on loan, and you pay per print. Of course, with Internet of Things, they can see exactly what they do and whatever. And okay, good, let's do that. What the interesting thing is, since you have Internet of Things, they can monitor the copier, they can see the status, if the certain elements of the apparatus are still good or not. They have their marketing, they know exactly if they do color copies or black and white, A3, A4, whatever, they know it exactly. They don't need the marketing department or the department anymore. And before the moment that they see, now the copier is really at the end of life, they take it back, they put another thing in place and they take it back to the factory and they're going to basically decompose it like a Lego. And they say, well, this is a component that we can, like say, a rolling blade that we can use again. This is a component like the glass plate we can use again. This is a component like the chip that makes the photos. Oh, we have better now because we're 5 years down the line. And they have thought about it already 5 years ago when designing this copier. So they really make a design, a roadmap for the next 10, 50 years. And all of a sudden they can make a new copier that is maybe consisting for 70, 80% out of old components for which they don't have to pay anything. Well, that is good business. That is really good business. So maybe in this way you can do these kind of, make a business model that is inherently good for circularity. It is called, basically you pay for the service and not for the product anymore. There's a lot of caveats with that. Okay, and sorry, but I also say to a lot of politicians, we cannot do this without policy. We in the Netherlands are extremely good now in recycling and reuse and all this kind of thing. Why is that? We banned landfill. We have a landfill tax. Incineration became super expensive because we needed good flue gas cleaning and all this kind of stuff. So if you make the prices high enough, then of course recycling becomes the cheaper option automatically. But it's artificial. It is market intervention. You cannot do it without market intervention. The other thing that we see is that, for instance, to do end-of-life vehicle recycling, we could not do that without extended producer responsibility in the beginning, because it was clear that actually taking a car apart, selling the parts and whatever would not compensate at that point yet the dismantling and the collection and the whole system that we set up. So the solution was for every car that you buy, you basically pay €100 extra as a deposit. Yeah, and that €100 went to what we call Auto Recycling Netherlands, Car Recycling Netherlands, and that was the organization that had to make the whole system working. By the way, the interesting thing was that 10 years later, they had become so good that we didn't need the deposit anymore. They were capable of making the whole system so efficient that you then could actually pay the dismantling and the collection by the revenues of the secondary materials. But you see, policy intervention is actually always needed. Even kijken. A word about modeling. That is actually maybe more for your economic people, but what is important to understand, a lot of models, and you're a bank, you want to understand how the country benefits from the investments that you do. A lot of these models are built for, let's say, in interventions in the climate arena and energy. That is relatively simple, although the models are complicated. You probably have something like 8 or 10 energy generating technologies in electricity and that kind of thing. So you need a model that covers that and the rest of society. The typical input-output models and the CGE models and the dynamic models that you have, integrated assessment, yeah, they do quite well if you have about 70 sectors to cover. ADB, I know that you work on an input-output table for the Asia Pacific. That's something what you have there. The problem in my field is the recycling of my computer already works totally different as the recycling of the copier and the recycling of this chair here. So you need literally very detailed material flow analysis, LCA, to really understand what's happening there. But these models are static. Yeah, they give you a material flow. We think that is the intervention, and then this happens and whatever. No prices, usually no job information, let alone dynamic features that you have in these dynamic models. Like if your waste management becomes so expensive, okay, then what are the people going to do? Are they going to buy other things or whatever? Economic modelers, they have price elasticities in their models. We don't have that. So somehow we have to combine these micro models with these macro models. And that is another thing that we see in the circular economy is very badly needed. So what we try to do, and this is maybe a bit too technical, but I have a meeting actually with one of your statisticians later on, and then I think he will like this figure. What we try to do is linking the micro models that we have, that you literally can say like, okay, let's see if we recycle all the cars in the Netherlands in this and this way, and it costs you so much, and we have these secondary materials, or we extend the lifetime of these cars. There we need the very detailed material flow and LCA models that my institute is now on. But then we try to link it with dynamic models, CGE models. We probably can say, okay, car manufacturing is often still a sector in these kind of models, so we can link that to each other. And maybe we can see that if you change the system from a micro perspective, how expensive things are, and you can maybe give the price information then to the CGE modelers, and you can build something out of it. So that is a little bit how we try to actually assess the impact of investment in sustainable technologies, if you like. And I think in general that could be quite interesting for ADB as well to co-develop these kind of approaches, because you can do that at country level, you can do that at city level, you can do that at regional level. Our models have all these kind of like trade relations in. So we can calculate, actually one of my PhDs from Indonesia is doing that. What is going to happen with Indonesia, and then particularly Riau province, where you have a lot of palm oil production? If the EU bans the import of palm oil, well, we can just calculate that, we make an estimate of that. Yeah, so good. Then, okay, yeah. Now I come to a question that I have all the time, and Shanti, we're talking about it. I'm a bit intrigued by the question. You're a bank. I was just talking with someone who was talking about the Pasig River project that you apparently manage, and she has a problem that has to be solved in 5-6 months with really top-notch knowledge about how do we combine all these actors and the technologies and whatever. And I have to be honest, I think I have a reasonable overview, not in everything. I'm not a water management specialist, but I have this helicopter view. But don't ask for me. I'm a professor. In my university, I have to supervise my PhDs, and there are a lot of PhDs graduating next half year, so at least I have to spend 2 months with them. I do an educational program of a month or two, and by the way, some Chinese people invited me for 2 months to go there. So and that is actually what's happening with people in universities. They cannot act as consultants. That is very bluntly and very shortly what they have to say. So, and much of the needs that you as an ADB had are these short-term kind of things like, we need a solution there, and then you work with consultants. That's how it goes. So I really am thinking like, okay, how can we really make things work that universities or Leiden Delft Erasmus can work together with a bank like yours? I see a number of opportunities for that. We have all kind of nice educational programs. We know how to set up interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary integration. Transdisciplinary is that you really work with practice and improve your knowledge with practice and so on, which in my field, sustainability, we need to do that. So in that sense, we work already slightly different as, let's say, the astronomers. The astronomers need money from Science Foundation or whatever, and they look at the stars. What I say to my people when I was a director, I'm happy if you do 10 or 15% consultancy projects, because then you know what the EU and what the government and whatever is doing, but not more, because then you have the same time problem that I just explained to you. Yeah. You need to do your education and so on. So we are used to that. And I think that is a useful thing also for ADB. We have networks, of course, with all kind of universities here. I list here a few, but let's not take too much time to go through all these universities. And I think what the real thing that we can do is try to twin education in different ways. And that can be low threshold ways of collaborating between our universities and maybe things that the ADB sees is useful. What we do, for instance, already, we have a minor in sustainable development that is for third years bachelor students, a program of 6 months. Yeah, they can come from everywhere. They can come from law. They have half a year to do something else as the normal program. And we offer a sustainability program. In that program, we have a project of 6 weeks. We worked already with Isabella State University and with Universitas Indonesia that we sent 10 over 80 students to Indonesia or to the Philippines, twin them with 10 of the students of the local university and work on a certain subject. Some of our students really are eager to go abroad. They even had to pay their own flight and their own lodging and that kind of things. But we then sent a supervisor, the local university has a supervisor. And you have, in a very low threshold way, you have a nice collaboration, you build up relations with the university and so on. So that is one thing that we, I think, easily can do also in other places. I was yesterday talking with someone who is for you in Thailand, and he sees all kind of problems with the steel industry and whatever that is squeezed between Chinese competition and the import, the carbon import tax that we have in Europe. And yeah, well, why not have a little student project or what, you know? What we also have, of course, we run at least 2 big master programs in the field of industry ecology and governance, and via my Center for Sustainability in Delft and whatever, in Rotterdam. You have much more. I think we have a pool of hundreds of master students, some of them who really are interested in the kind of problems that we see in this part of the world. What we do with these students now already in the Netherlands, we put people from economics, business, industry, ecology, governance together in what we call interdisciplinary thesis labs. And then, for instance, you get things like, we have a hospital, we know that the operations room is incredibly waste intensive. Can't we make that better? So you need medical students, we need a business student, we need an LCA, and that kind of things. And all these students make their own thing, but geared around the same subject. And then all of a sudden, I mean, you cannot guarantee, let's say, a consultancy quality outcome, but some of them are really good, you know? So you get something nice out of it. And we literally have clients, between brackets, that pay a little bit of extra that we need to do the additional supervision in that. And again, I mean, I can imagine that this concept can also work if you put a number of our students together with a number of students of universities here in the region around topics that work for the ADB. Again, low threshold, doesn't cost a lot. What more? I think another thing is that there is a need for capacity development in this part of the region. Some universities know already how to do their education and so on, but they also heard a lot of stories that, yeah, they don't know how to set up, let's say, an LCA course or an MFA course. I can very well imagine, again, as long as it costs 10% or 15% of the time of the people that I supervised when I was a director of CML, but Martina, my successor, probably will think about the same. And that time is paid, well, we can help. You know, you do, let's say you go 2 weeks to a university and you organize a challenge or an intensive week, a design week for a new course, and you help them with that. Hello. So I think that is, again, a relatively low threshold, low cost thing that we can do. And then twinning research, that is where I see at the end of the day, that we are more at the core of the work of my of universities. What I see now already, if you have, for instance, the CSC program, the LDPD program, that is stipend programs from the countries where you work with. Well, these people get stipends, they come to us, and a bit to my surprise, I see 80% of these people that do a PhD with us in Leiden. They do it often in combination with work in the country where they come from, and 80% goes back. Yeah, the Chinese or the Indonesians, doesn't matter. And that is really, I would say, a very effective way, again, of capacity development, and even doing projects in fields that are relevant for these countries and probably also relevant for you. And of course, my ideal would be that if you really want to have an incredible big investment program, like Nusantara in Indonesia, where you put money in, the Indonesian government puts money in, and they want to make it the greenest city in the world. And I think, well, we have this faculty of architecture there in Leiden. We know exactly how you measure biodiversity in an urban context and how you can optimize that. Why don't you build a capacity program, 10, 15 PhDs in parallel to it, with local partners, partner universities, and then all of a sudden you do things between ADB and the Leiden-Delft Erasmus combination, where you really see we work at the core together of the core of the business what the university is. I think I stop here. So, Suzanne.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Maybe you stay in the front here. So let's first hear some questions. I think you touched on the basics of circular economy, the need for interdisciplinary research and collaboration, and then you spoke a bit about transfer of knowledge and co-creation of solutions. Maybe while you think about this, my question for you is, number one, how can this be scaled? Okay. And number two, is the research that's relevant, thank you, for developed countries the same that is relevant for developing countries? Because you touched on the issue of it's not so much about material circularity, but also new materials.
Even kijken, how to scale up. For me, it is clear you cannot scale up without policy incentives. I think a very good example is my experience when I was actually starting my career. I started it at the Ministry of Environment. I was in the midst of this whole transition between a landfill country and becoming a recycling country. We did that in something like 8 to 10 years. Why was that? There was a huge popular pressure to really do something about waste, because we had big waste scandals with toxins under the floors of houses. People had to be evacuated and that kind of thing. So really the population was in arms against the government. You have to do something about it. That gave us at the ministry a lot of leeway to say, we want to have targets, we want to have that and that and that. And industry could not fight against that because the population was actually backing us. Yeah. So my senior people, my bosses at the time, they could say, well, for instance, with the car industry, we have a target of so and so much recycling, let's say 90%. And we invite you, please come to us. We're not going to talk about the target anymore. We're only going to talk about how to do that in the smartest way. Yeah, because we at the ministry, we don't know technical in and out that you know. And that worked quite well. And very quickly we came with these solutions like extended producer responsibility, the deposit scheme, and so on and so on. And it worked. That was it. What we see now with the circular economy, the whole, as you know, we probably are starting our most right-wing government in a month from now. Oh my God. But okay, that is the situation in the Netherlands now. So I think 7 years ago, there were the first ideas to have a circular economy program in the Netherlands. And since then, there was another plan, there was an executive plan, there was another plan, and whatever. And I'm sitting with PBL in this monitoring program, and we see basically nothing is changing. Yeah, and that is because we don't have a law on the right of repair, we don't have that, we don't have that, we don't have the incentives. Scaling up, waste is worthless. The point is, like, throwing away waste is the easiest thing to do. So you have to have incentives to make it right. That is inevitable. That is one thing. And then I come to the point, like you said, what is the difference between Western Europe and this part of the world? I don't want to go that far, but I would say, I mean, like I said, also in my country 60 years ago, it was a total mess. Like, I mean, that we ended up in a situation that we evacuate people from houses because we had to put hazardous waste somewhere in kennels. Lunatic. I mean, I mean, you can say here, Pasig River is a mess. Well, my country was a mess. At least I think we had a good institutional capacity to do something about it. Yeah, that is one thing. So I just finalized a little study for the Swiss government. They want to help countries in the south on improving waste management of electronics. And you basically see there are 4 elements that you have to put in place. Institutional capacity, you need to have people in the ministry that set laws and regulations and that kind of things. You need to have standards and enforcement. You have to say, well, I want to have that the treatment is at least of this quality. And you need a kind of policeman looking if it works like that. You need actually money to make for firms that really can do that, or maybe even the informal sector, I don't care, that it works. And you need to monitor things. Well, I was just talking with Caroline, I believe, from that is busy with the Spasek River. She doesn't know where to start. There is no governance, you don't know, you don't have data. What is the stuff going into the river and all this kind of stuff. So that makes it so difficult to solve issues in this part of the world. My feeling is that, again, extended producer responsibility for certain waste streams can really be a solution. If you have plastics, and you know that maybe Coca-Cola and some other big guys and Unilever are actually, they are very 60-70% responsible for the plastic that goes into this country. I would talk with them. You say in the West, I want to be responsible. I want you to be responsible here. Sign up to the EPR program. That implies that you may, pay 1 cent per kilogram of plastics. And then the Philippine government all of a sudden has the money to build up that capacity, to build up the monitoring, very much like the deposit scheme on cars, to make sure that the people who treat the waste get proper payment and so on. So I think that are the kind of things that you have to do.
Okay, so let's hear from the audience. Maybe our circular economy experts. Any reflections, thoughts?
Hi, I'm Steve Peters. I'm the Senior Energy Specialist for Waste to Energy. So I was listening to your comments, and it's funny, AWECT, which was the guys in Rotterdam, the company that was running that, came and saw us about 3 or 4 years ago. And they heavily influenced our thinking in what became our energy policy and then a subsequent guidance note on waste to energy. Now, the main content of that guidance note is privileged information because it's related to our operations. But the one challenge we face is that if we try and make this compliant to Paris and the joint MDB lending protocols, we have to avoid the problem of a stranded asset. And if you build a big waste to energy plant and then someone comes in and changes the technology and suddenly you don't have the waste, that's a huge problem. Now, in a lot of countries around the region, there are significant amounts of material in landfill that might be able to fill that up. But what we're seeing and what we think is going to happen is that we want to limit the amount of waste to energy as the total capacity of waste. And then we don't want to make it 100%. We're having some things, people come in with 120%. We just say no at the total daily volume. But the challenge is that a lot of our countries are, as you said, in the 60 years ago, they just want to get it done, right? They want to get everything cleaned. It's sometimes a bit of a complex challenge to do that. And in different countries, for instance, the PRC has a very, as you said, very strongly pro-waste to energy policy, whereas the Philippines is the exact opposite. Okay. And then you have other countries in the middle. I think you're right about driven by policy. Policy is the most important thing to get any of these things happening.
And maybe because this is a seminar from our human capital development people here, maybe some discussion on capacity would be very good. I don't know if any reflections or thoughts on that. How fast can we also build capacity?
Does anybody want to jump in? Otherwise, I will. Vishal. Okay. This LTE Alliance is a great kind of triumvirate of looking at technology, policy, sustainability, and the business model. Like you said, the link with the business sector to make sure that somehow the business models are also attuned to that whole circularity principle. But if we look at this kind of an alliance, do you see any parallel in any other country or region?
The alliance of universities.
Yeah, the alliance concept. And ADB is supporting a number of universities in the region, some like a number of universities within a certain country, like Vietnam, Indonesia, Philippines now, and so on. So is this something that you would consider to be an important way to build human capital, but also making sure that different disciplines work together to achieve that goal, which cannot be achieved by one set of people alone? So is there some like really big merit to doing this type of a combined human capital development?
Okay, that's actually two questions. I will be very short with you. When I was 30 years ago in the ministry, this was the discussion, like how much waste to energy do we need? And so you need to make scenarios, basically. That is it. Actually, one of my first big assignments at TNO was exactly this. I worked against the then director of AVR. I was calculating, I think you don't need to have an additional hazardous waste incinerator because I don't see the amount of waste. The guy was furious. I was 30 something and he was, I don't know, an old director and I was blocking him. I think 10 years later, he thanked me because I avoided an investment for waste that now is actually treated in cement kilns and that kind of thing. So you can do that as well. So I think the answer to that is very simple. You have to make waste scenarios and you have to make realistic assumptions what is happening in the next 10, 15 years, what can we recycle and what not. And then indeed avoid overcapacity of waste. We still have it. We stopped capacity planning at some point. And now we have a waste incinerator in Amsterdam that has to import waste from the UK to keep themselves going. They have to keep themselves going because it's a waste to energy plant and they heat, I don't know, 20,000 houses around them. If they don't work anymore, you don't have heat in your houses, so, and planning and scenario planning, that is the answer here. And okay, then I go to the capacity. Actually, we do that a little bit. Maybe I think Wim van den Doel was here some time ago. Well, he knows a lot about Indonesia. He speaks Bahasa and whatever. And he made an alliance, or there were 5 universities in Indonesia that he kind of grouped together with Leiden Delft Erasmus. We put some money in, the Indonesian government put some money in. And okay, I still have to see what comes out of it. But that hopefully gives between Leiden Delft Erasmus and these 5 universities a kind of PhD program, for capacity building. And I said already a few times that I see in certain countries, Indonesia, they really in the 70s and the 80s were very smart. They sent their top people abroad and they now have a cadre at the top level of universities that are really state of the art. And now they have to build up the rest. So, but they're in a good position to do that. What I know from Thailand, and that is more bottom up, that in the field of life cycle assessment, a guy from King Mongkut's University of Technology in Thonburi, Kamut, he set up the joint school of life cycle assessment or something like that. So he teamed up 5 universities, whatever. I also know that sometimes it doesn't work that well. We in the Netherlands are kind of like, of course you compete, but also you collaborate. That is a bit how we are. We are trading people and whatever. And at some point, you're my enemy because you want to sell that to her. But the next day we find ourselves, we're in a very strange country and we have to help a bit. That is a bit of culture. What I see in China, very interesting, 4 or 5 super famous professors, probably with more citations as I. The one is in Peking University, the other 2 or 3 are in Tsinghua, and they all lead different groups. And they look at me like, what did you do that very well with CML, 170 people, that's a powerhouse. And I'm like, if you would put together your capacities, you would build a powerhouse. Probably even more powerful than we have done in Leiden. But somehow that is not possible. That the structure is not, the incentives are not there. So it also has to do a little bit with incentive structures, culture, and that kind of things.
Maybe on that, because we are running out of time. One question here from online is if you can share best practices, if any, on how to build capacity of policymakers and getting their buy-in and considering they change during election, but basically good examples of capacity development for policymakers.
I think then you have to go to the kind of short courses, 1 week, even less, because
are they effective?
To some extent, yes. And I see, again, it has to do in Indonesia. I see a number of brilliant people that for some reason I know Armida Ali Shabana because she was the supervisor of my PhD, and then I learned she was doing Bappenas as a minister. She's now heading ESCAP and that kind of things. And if you look at her career and whatever, she knows the world. She studied in the US and whatever. If you look at the current minister of, I think, economic affairs or finances, she was one of the people leading the World Bank, coming back, really a big program on, what is it? I forgot the word. Now, so that are people that got it. I come to other countries and you can give them high ranked people courses like you like, but as long as they live in a system whereby doing their thing in the bad ways, you don't change them. That is a little bit the problem. So I think you need to see if there's fertile ground where people say we are eager to learn and whatever. And I see that with a lot of.
Is that the role of ADB, of development banks, to build that capacity?
I think you have to. I think you have to, because I mean, all the time what I see, it is not about technology, it is about governance and capacity to put that in place. And then technology is a kind of following.
I think this is very, very important for everyone here to remember, and for us to tell our senior management about governance and capacity. We should focus on that. There's another question. This is the last one.
Yes, so just a quick one. It's also related to that. So I'm currently a consultant here in ADB Intermittent for Paris alignment, but for BB2, so it's not for mitigation. But I'm also a consultant in the Global Green Growth Institute. I'm a solid waste management expert. And so just recently, related to that amazing question, is that I had a one-on-one interview, not one-on-one, but with a interview with the Solid Waste Management Division of the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. And one of
in the Philippines? In the Philippines?
In the Philippines, yes. And I talked with the division chief of that division, and she mentioned that one of their problems is that the change of leadership in every election, and even now, just recently, the director of the Environmental Management Bureau just changed. So a lot of directions, even for the international projects, changed. So one of their suggestions is for the Philippines to have a training facility based on solid waste management, or maybe other environmental or knowledge for every time that there is a change in leadership. So do you think that each and every time that there is a change in leadership, every 3 years, because in the Philippines, for presidential or national, it's 6 years, but for their senators and municipal mayors, that changes every 3 years. Do you think like a training facility that's mandated by law for lawmakers to attend to each and every time that there's change in leadership would be effective? And what would be the curriculum or maybe the programs?
Maybe two answers to that. I think you have the key is institutional memory. Yeah, that is it. What I understand from you, if the policy level changes, also the other level beyond that changes. That's a bit the American system, and that is complicated, because that implies that actually you lose your management layers. We in the Netherlands don't have that. The Secretary General of a ministry stays put, has to serve any government in the best way he or she can, but we keep the people. There's pros and cons, but at least the big pro is that the institutional memory at the highest level is being kept. So you have to find a solution in the Philippines then for the fact that this is more fluid. And then you need to find a layer where the institutional memory is good. And then you must hope that the policy appointed director general or something like that is not a lunatic. Yeah, sorry, I'm a bit blunt now, but that it is a wise person, that it is a person that understands that maybe the capacity and the real knowledge is not with him, but with or her or with someone else. So, and maybe indeed courses like that can help, but
so it's also governance.
That's again governance. It is like it's and culture as well. I mean, I worked in Colombia, and then you see basically there that if you have PhDs going abroad, learning a lot, they can hardly go back to Colombia because the professors there are not yet at the level as where you have them here, and so they are almost afraid for people abroad. I mean, I think here in the Philippines and the best universities in Indonesia, I see that is not the case. They welcome these young people because they find a context where they can grow, and so it is always culture, it is always governance, and you have to think about it, and I think the solution that you indicate can work. Yeah.
So it calls
at least
for
it helps.
Interdisciplinary solutions.
Yeah, and also indeed, if you indeed like, I would say, the director general must have the basics in his or her head about like the things that you indicate. Like, if you build too much waste to energy, you kill prevention and reuse for the next 20 years. These kind of very simple things. And I think that there a course can help, because I mean we have people like me and others, and you could give the course, I guess, you know, and then you do a crash course of a few days, like a do's and don'ts in solid waste management, or the do's and don'ts in water management. I don't know.
All right, so I think lots of different aspects that you touched on: interdisciplinarity, more work on governance and capacity development, more systematic, more programmatic, more knowledge transfer, more research, more data. So a lot to do, and we do hope that we can collaborate with you. Thank you very much here for everyone for attending, and we wish you a great rest of your visit. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for moderating.